Welcome to another episode of Heart to Heart. Today we have the profound privilege of hearing directly from Frida Umuhoza as she shares her journey of survival, forgiveness, and the power of resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. Her story serves a beacon of hope and a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moment, love and humanity can prevail. Frida is a wife, a devoted mother. She is the author of the amazing book, Chosen to Die, Destined to Live. Everyone should get a copy of this. I've read it. It's powerful, powerful. Frida is a frequent speaker in high schools, universities, and churches around the world. Frida spoke at the UN headquarters in New York during the 2016 annual commemoration of the Rwanda genocide against the Tutsi. Frida, welcome.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you.
You coming to us all the way from Australia.
Yes, I am.
And I know there's like an 18-hour difference.
I know.
So it's
Saturday for us, and it's Friday still for you.
Exactly. So we are very, very honored to have you here. And I know we have been talking about this. So finally, this is the day. How are you feeling? How are you?
I'm doing really good, and I feel really honored that you have invited me. Thanks for having me, and really looking forward to this as well.
Yeah, same here. Looking forward to our conversation. So, as I say, you have a powerful story, and you have been going around the world, in speaking engagements and talking about it. You're very open about what happened, the genocide in Rwanda, and even your family. So, before we get to it, I want you to talk about your childhood.
Yeah.
I want you to backtrack a little bit. I want to know about the little girl who's still inside of you. Your childhood, those memories that you're still holding on to. How was life like living in Rwanda? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, thank you. So I grew up in a small, well, I'll call it not even a town really. It was a countryside, and that was in the side of Nyanza. And I was born in the family of 6 children. So my dad and mom had twins before me, and then myself, and then 2 brothers, and then a little girl, my baby sister. So growing up back home, it was even though I'll get to that. Even though we went through, I grew up in the middle of segregation and racism and hated as my tribe. But at the same time, family-wise, my family was very, really close together, and grew up close to my grandparents. And so my grandparents lived in the same village. My grandfather was a teacher. My dad was a businessman, and which meant that he didn't really leave home much growing up. When I was growing up, but my mom lived close to her in-laws, so which meant I was also able to see some of my cousins. So we really lived in the same village as a family, where I could see my cousins. I guess the happy moments where come the school break, where you have cousins come to your house, stay for a week, and then you get to go with them. I wasn't much allowed to do that because my mom was more of the African mom who trains her girls to do a lot of work. I'm sure you know that. And so Absolutely. I did a lot of work. So it was very hard for me to get the permission to maybe go to visit my cousins like my brothers did. But I still enjoyed, I was a very sporty kid. So I still enjoyed playing. I enjoyed running. So I did run for my school. So was my brother and sister as well. So we were kind of a family that was much sporty. And I think that my childhood was mostly, even though I didn't understand much of what I did in some extent, but it didn't affect my childhood with my family. So it was a very loving, extended family. When it comes to memories for me, those are the ones that I hold. I hold also memories of a mother who trained me to be a hard worker and do things and learn how to do things, and really hardworking in school and outside school at home. So yeah, those are the memories that I really hold dear.
That's really great. Loving
Yeah.
family, grew up in a small town, and I really see that you were really close to, your your family and your extended family as well. So that's good to
Yeah.
hear that. So you talked about segregation. There was a So which tribe are you from?
So I'm a Tutsi. So in Rwanda we had, when I say we had, it's because we don't refer ourselves according to that anymore. We're all referred to as Rwandans, which is amazing. But
Wow.
at that point, I come from a Tutsi side, and there was Hutus, which was the majority, and then there was the Batwa tribe as well, which was the 1%. So like I said, I learned a little. I learned what I was in school. My parents didn't tell me. My grandparents didn't tell me. You would learn that in school because there will be counting of how many Tutsis and how many Hutus are in the class, and that would happen every time, if not every few months. And so either the principal or a teacher will come in the class and they will count how many Tutsis and how many Hutus are in the class. So that's how I learned through my best friend, because she was a Tutsi as well. And maybe we'll get to that a little bit later, but her grandfather had been killed in 1959. So she knew a little bit about her story, but I didn't. And my parents didn't prepare me. And I think for parents, for Tutsi parents, they didn't see the need to probably, inflict the fear in the child. And on the other hand, I guess they also knew we'll find out anyways. When you go to school, you'll find out. So you come home with a lot of questions. But that's how I discovered that I was a wrong tribe at that point.
Oh, goodness. Wow, that's very interesting. And I love what you said, that your parents kind of didn't see the need to let you know. And I feel like that's important. That's important. And it's kind of like they sheltered you, sort of,
Yes. Yes.
almost. Yeah.
Yes. I think because parents themselves grow, like my dad and my mom didn't go finish high school because they were kicked out as Tutsis. So I guess parents lived in fear of their lives all the time. So when you're living in fear, I think the one wish, or the one thing that you probably wish for your child, is for them not to live the same way. But then I think I sometimes look back and I think, I wish actually my parents sat me down and prepared me a little bit.
Really?
Because, yeah, a little bit. But then on the other hand, as a parent myself today, there are things that are sometimes hard to tell a little girl as a 6-year-old. And even when we grew up a little bit older, there are things that we had to find out for ourselves that our parents were not able to discuss with us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very good story. We're going to a good place. Yeah, we're going slowly but surely. So I'm very interested about the tribe, the Tutsi, the Hutu, of course. We've heard about it because I'm originally from the Congo. From your experience, what started the conflict? What was some of the long-standing underlying issues between the tribes that contributed to the genocide in Rwanda?
Well, don't know if I can really be able to answer that at length, but at the same time, we all are aware of the colonization time, but then I also feel like the long-lasting racism that started when the Tutsis and the Hutus and the identity cards that were given, and all that divisions, divide to conquer, but also at the same time when we allow hate speech, when we allow racism, when we allow you know, the comments that are made against this group of people or that group of people, and not actually speak against it as a government, and not also act to punish those kind of crimes, and, you know, just taking it lightly. But then the hatred, you know, hatred is like a seed, you know. I think it was Mandela who said, you know, love is taught and hate is also taught. Nobody's born racist, you know, it's all taught. And so if in the family of the Hutus, the children are told, when you go in school and they ask the Hutus to stand, you know, you're the right, you are the deserving tribe, you are the deserving group. It's like the white and the black, you know, if you are the deserving and the privileged, and all that if you are told at a young age, and not actually the parents to speak to you the equality, and, you know, speak against it. And when the Hutu children would come in the class and they are asked to stand up, and they stand with pride, because they believe they are better than the Tutsis. And for us, it moved from just being hated to dehumanization, and humanization of where we were called snakes. We weren't humans to them anymore. We were called snakes. We were called cockroaches. And so that long-lasting political issues for the Hutus to think that it's them and we are the other, you know, we don't belong. And I remember as a child, we used to be told by our friends in school, we will kill you and send you back to Ethiopia, you know, that you don't belong here. And all those comments and all those hatred crimes. And then you hear in this one part of Rwanda, Tutsis have been slaughtered, been killed. Nothing is done. You can't report it. My dad was attacked when I was 10 years old, about 10 or 11 years old. And he was attacked in the night, in the middle of the night. And this is when that genocide was now being prepared, when they were starting to prepare the genocide. I mean, like, we all knew that we were hated. We all knew something was gonna happen, but I don't think it crossed our minds that it would be a genocide that would take a million, where they will kill a million Tutsis, over a million Tutsis in just 3 months. I don't think any of the parents thought about that. I don't think any of us, because we were friends. We had friends in the communities that are Hutus. My dad had helped a lot of Hutus in our communities. My grandfather had done the same. So I think in your mind, you think, yeah, maybe they will kill people like they did in Kibuye or that in 1990 something. But then nobody ever imagined that they will actually finish the 1 million people or over a million people in just 3 months. So to answer your question, I think it is racism that was, and hate speeches that was just like supported by the government itself, and, you know, sponsored it and funded it and taught it, and the hatred grew up into racism. Racism grew up into killing, you know, because it was encouraged. It was seen as an act of patriotism of their own country, to get rid of the enemy who was us, to get rid of the snakes who was us, to get rid of the cockroaches who were, to them, who weren't humans. So, and I think the genocide, as you know, the genocide has 10 stages, and it does not, they don't wake up one morning and decide to do a genocide. It is planned, is premeditated and planned for years. So yeah, I think goes back really from, you know, from all those years of just hovering the hatred and nurturing it.
It's very interesting that you use the word racism, because I live in America, and racism usually has to do with two races, you know, black and white, or, you know, black and Hispanic. But very interesting that people who came from the same country, I mean, from looking from an outsider, you all look alike. Tutsi, Hutu, me, you all look alike. So to really, I mean, to have that level of hatred Um,
Yes.
it's really hard to swallow. It's very
Yeah,
hard to swallow.
that's very true. And
Yeah.
that's where I think even for the next generation for us, and I even when I tell my children my story of how I survived and how I lost my entire family, when I tell them, I'm making sure that I'm telling my children my story in a way that does not create revenge, does not create hate, does not create. So I have to then go beyond. But what I want you to learn from this is, what I want you to, how I want you to carry yourselves despite all this. This is how I want to see, the next generation, because it's the way parents at home speak to their children, the way teachers in school teach the children, the way the government go about the one group that is put aside, that is spoken against and bullied, and not just then come to a point where it's us against them.
Yeah.
So when that group of people, despite that we spoke the same language, we lived in the same small country, in same villages, went to the same churches and everything, they always referred to us as, less than humans.
Yeah.
And so those are all signs to look for when a genocide is being pre-planned. It's not to be ignored.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I love what you said, that you're teaching your children with love. You want them to know the truth. But, you want them to know the truth, but you don't want them to develop this, hatred against, the other tribe. So I love what you said. You're teaching them with love. That's important. And you have the most influence on your children.
That's true.
Absolutely.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is the part that, and you have been, you are amazing. I'm just want to tell you, you are an amazing human being.
Oh,
Amazing human being. And you have courage and strength in you, like going around and just speaking about even your own family, what happened to your family. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your story? What happened to your family?
So, like I said, I had 5 siblings, but by the time the genocide started in 1994 in April, my youngest sister had already been killed. So what happened is that the Tutsis that were in exile in 1990 and the Hutus that did not agree with what was going on inside the country did join together to actually stop the racism and to stop the killing that was going on and to stop the genocide that was being prepared. And as they started, which is the Rwanda Patriotic Army, when they started and when they attacked in 1990, then that meant that the Tutsis that were inside the country were even in much more trouble. So my father was put in jail. My uncles, some of my uncles were also put in jail. A lot of men, a lot of women were captured and put in jail, being accused of being, traitors and supporting the army that was trying to come in. And then my father was in jail for some time, and then he came home. And that's when, after that, when he came home, that's when he was attacked and beaten, and they cut one of his fingers. Nothing, we couldn't report anything. Mom had to treat him at home and not say a thing. And the following year, my sister was a baby, was a 9 months baby, got sick. And at that point, I was in a boarding school. So mom had my youngest sister. She got sick and she was taken in a hospital, was killed in the hospital, nothing reported. So we would hear all these deaths and in different parts of Rwanda, but we weren't allowed to report anything. And so 1994, we were home, back home. I was 14 then. I just turned 14. It was 1 month after my birthday, my 14th birthday. My brother and sister who were older were 16, and my younger brother was 12, and my youngest brother at that point was 9 years old. So we were all home for Easter holidays. And when we were getting ready to go back to school on that same week, and we were actually getting ready to go with Dad to go and get all our, stuff that we needed, books and all the stuff that we needed to go back to the for me to go back to boarding school, for my sister and brother to start going to school, because they were going in a school not too far away from home. And in the morning, we hear the announcement over the radio that the president, Habyarimana, who was a Hutu president, had been assassinated. And so right then, my dad says, no way, we're not going anywhere. This is not good for us. This is really bad. Nobody's going to survive. And I'm thinking in my head, no, that should be the opposite, because this president, was probably the one that was actually planning the genocide. That should mean that the opposite for us.
Absolutely.
But my brother pulls all of us aside, 16-year-old boy who thinks he knows the politics, understands everything. But he actually did this a little bit, and he said, no, this means all the Tutsis are going to die. That means they're going to kill all of us. And funny enough, not funny, but a few years before then, we had boys and, friends in school always tell us that we were on the list of the Tutsis that are supposed to die. So they had already started making lists of people that will be killed and where they will be dumped, as in pits where they will, where they'll be dumped. And so then it all made sense that now all this that has been going on, all this crisis that has been going on, all this, killing in different parts, now it's actually going to spread in the whole country. And indeed, it was announced over the radio that now it's time, because there had been a private radio called the RTM that had actually was purposely there to plant hatred and play hate speech over that radio station. And so that was then that it was announced even over the national radio that the killing should start. So the machetes had already been supplied in every communities. So now it was for them, it was an opportunity to now start that genocide that has been prepared for months. This is why sometimes when people deny what happened in my country to my people, it's like, well, this whole thing I was really planned and funded, for years. So when they say that it's, when people who want to deny the genocide also say, well, it was because of the death of the former president. Well, those machetes were not bought and ordered on that day. It was all planned. And so then
can I just stop you right there?
Yes.
I'll let you finish, but I just want to say thank God for survivors like you who have gone through it, came out of it, and can actually tell the true story. So just want to say that. Yeah,
that's true. And as a child too, as a teenager, as a child, this comes from the eyes of a child, child who's now experienced all that point for me and for many of my friends and others. And so on that day, then there was no going to shop anymore. There was no school. There was nothing. Dad just said, this is it. Nobody goes anywhere. So that night we were able to sleep in our house, but then a lot of people started fleeing their homes and coming towards our village. So people were coming from all corners, coming to our village, because at least in our village, it had not started at that point. It took 3 weeks before we actually had the very first person killed in our village. So it took 3 weeks, which meant that a lot of people were coming towards our village thinking maybe it will be safer. But then that also meant for Nyanza and the side of Butare, it also meant that those guys took really the Interahamwe, the Hutus in that side took their time to really do. Because it took, as the genocide went on for 3 months. So for us, it started, and people were very known. It wasn't like you could even move from one area to another. But also, if you got captured, remember we had the identity cards. If you were older enough, you had the identity cards that said Tutsi. I still have my dad's identity cards here that says Tutsi in it. And so we left on the third, I think on the second week, it started being really, really rough. And we left, we started sleeping in the woods, that not too far away from home. We could still go back home, maybe get something to eat, but we couldn't stay home. Mom told us, put on as many clothes as you can. As you know, in Rwanda, I don't know if it's the same in the Congo, but in Rwanda, April, May, and June, it's a rain season. So really, I look back and I'm thinking, Mom told us to put on a lot of layers of, many layers of clothing, but it's actually harder when you are dragging a lot of wet clothes on your back. It doesn't really keep you warm at all. But anyways, she was trying to think out of the box of how can she now have many more chances of maybe a few of us survive. So she said to us, we're not gonna all go together. I'm gonna split all of you kids. But in your head as a child, you like, my only security is actually with my family. How am I gonna split with them? What if I never see them again? But we had to listen to her, because she said, if we split, we have more chances of a few of us surviving. If we go together, all of us gonna be killed together. So she was a wise woman at that point. She's always been at that point. And she said, that's how we're gonna do it. And she sent me and my sister. So I was at least very happy that I could go with my sister and my cousin who was with us. And then my brothers went with her. And then my dad went with other men. She also had 2 little boys from her friends, because like I said, a lot of people were coming in our area. So her friend had left 2 boys, 2 boys, 4 and 5 years old, with Mom. So I went to the neighbor's house, as Mom said, and she went somewhere else, and my dad went somewhere else. And on that 3rd week, that's when it really went bad. Roadblocks were set up in every 100 meters, I think. Roadblocks were used to be like kill centers, where they will come and celebrate how many people they've killed, how many people they've found, and then they'll drag you. If they caught you somewhere, they will drag you to the roadblock and kill you there. So really, the whole nation, there was nowhere to run. You couldn't go in a church. You couldn't go there's nowhere that you could run to. People changed. Neighbors whom we've always known as being gentle and Christian changed. People turned against us. So if a survivor tells you today they have issues with trust, people changed to a point that you didn't know whom to trust anymore.
You said your village had Hutus as well, right?
Yes.
Like, you guys welcomed them as well.
Yeah. So you weren't killed by a stranger. You were killed by a friend. You were killed by a next door neighbor. And this is what made it very difficult for the people of Rwanda to struggling with trust is a common thing because of that. Because a neighbor turned against a neighbor, a husband turned against a wife. Wives turned against husbands. Wives, sometimes mothers kill their children. Fathers kill their own children. So it was very traumatic.
Vicious.
And yes. And so that went on for a few weeks. And then, I'll just maybe get to the day that my family was killed. Was on the 7th of May. And, as I said, we've been running around and hiding here and there, being captured, sometimes be taken to the roadblock. And on the day that my family was killed, was the 7th of May, was a Saturday, was very early morning. And they came and got all of us out of my grandpa's house. My grandpa was a godly man. You talk about the one memory that I didn't share earlier was that my grandfather is the person that probably taught me to pray, is the person that taught me about God. And And on that night, the night before we were killed, my grandfather put all of us together, 18 people in his house, his wife, my grandmother, my mom, my brothers, those two little kids. So all together we were 18 people, my immediate family and a few other people that were there, and brought us, all of us together, and we prayed. And he said to us, tomorrow morning when they come, don't try to run and don't scream. Die quietly. Just keep quiet, because there's no help. But guess what? Where we're going is where they cannot touch our souls.
Yes.
We're going to heaven.
Yes.
As a 14-year-old, you don't want to hear that. You want to hear that God that you are calling on is going to rescue you. He's going to save your family. He's going to save your life by stopping these killers, no matter what. At the same time, you didn't want to go to hell, so you did pray. You didn't want to run because we had been running for months. So I think for me and my brothers, we got to a point where at least, like, let's just stick together and die together. And so early morning, probably like 3 or 4 o'clock, you'd lost track of what time is, to be honest. 3 or 4 o'clock, not to mention that we had been in that home, no food, nothing whatsoever. And we've been there for a week or so. And my father was hiding on the roof of the house. So they didn't know he was still alive. So we then were laid outside the house because we had them kill the neighbors first. We heard the screams, but we couldn't. You actually get paralyzed because of fear. You get paralyzed. But my grandfather brought us all together in the same little room, because when we heard the neighbors scream, we all ran in one little room, which, by the way, at the beginning of this year, I took my children back home and I took them in that very room and sat in the very same spot where I was sitting. And we sat there praying and begging God, at the same time repenting of our sins, knowing that you are. Let me tell you something that I never say about the Tutsis that were killed. I think it was a horrible death. Everybody died a horrible death. I'm not saying that death is a good thing. It's never a good thing. But there's having your loved one sick and you nurse them, and then you let them go when it's time for them to go. We all will have that time. But the fact that we were tormented and traumatized for 3 months, not to talk about all those years before, but the fact that for 3 months you hid in a bush, for 3 months you hid places, you lived in fear every second, every minute. You knew you were gonna die. So by the time they got to us, it was your senses, your whole being, your spirit, your emotions, your body is already tormented and tired. And so when then my grandfather asked us to pray, and what I was gonna say is that people had all those 3 months to actually connect their hearts with God, because there was no other, there was no other
way.
No other way and no other help. At that point, when you're hopeless, I think even someone who didn't pray before, the only person that had the power on your life was at that point, the Hutus had made themselves God, which is why when you take a life, there's a revenge. There's a revenge from God. There's a punishment of God, because you've made yourself. Revenge is not ours, but there's that punishment of God on your behavior, or making yourself a God on somebody else's life, to determine and to decide when to end somebody else's life. This is what murder is, something that is, that God hates. And so, and bloodshed. And so we were then led from that very room, we were led to go into the pit, or on the pit, at the pit where they were gonna kill us from. My grandfather had a Bible in his hands, and he said to them, why are you doing this to us? Jesus Christ loved us, and I taught you, as a teacher, I've taught you, and I've loved you like my own children. What are you doing this to us? But they wouldn't listen to us. And they even said to him, if we were to let you go, we'll let you and your wife because you're old, but not these young snakes. My grandfather looked at them and said, you will let me and my wife go and kill my children and grandchildren? And said, yeah, because we're not going to let them go. He said, if you leave me and you take my children and grandchildren, isn't that like leaving me like a tree with no branches or leaves?
My
He said,
God.
no,
My
I'll rather go with them. So he went with us, and he actually took, he went in front of us. He took he was in front of us and led us into a hymn. And the hymn was actually in my language. And it says, we are deadly bodies. We're going to heaven. And you cannot touch our souls. You cannot touch our hearts.
Yes, Lord.
And we sang the song and be led to that place. My father could hear the whole conversation, so he didn't come down with us. We were then led into that ditch. Then, so at that point, there was only 16 of us left, because the one lady that was my mom's friend, she tried to run, and then my mom's cousin had a baby, and her father was a Hutu. So during that time, you were defined by what the father is. And so she said to them, this baby's father is a Hutu, please allow me to take the baby. So they let her go. So now it was 16 of us left. My grandparents, my mom, my 4 siblings, my few of my cousins, my aunties, and we're all laid in the same ditch, and we're told to lay down in that ditch. I also took my kids, just this year, took my kids to that very ditch where we were then beaten and cut with machetes. It was just chaos. My brother screaming, all those little kids screaming, and I was hit at the back of my head and neck with a big club, with a big stick. And I don't know if the guy hit me more than once, but what I felt and heard was the first one that made me unconscious. So maybe he did hit more than that, but I was on the first one, I lost consciousness. So I don't know how long I was unconscious for, but when I woke up, I found that they were already digging and burying because everybody had died. So I tell myself, if I speak, they're gonna know that I'm still alive and gonna pull me aside and kill me in a bad way. So I thought to myself, Stitch is not too big. I'll keep quiet. After they leave, I'll go out. I'll come out. I'll just shake myself and come out. But it was bigger than I actually thought. And I remember with 16 people all in the same ditch, and muddy ditch. And so I laid there after they buried and left, and I tried to shake. I couldn't move. My sister that was laying next to me, she was still a little, she was still breathing and she was still talking. And I tried to talk to her, and a few minutes later, took her last breath. I think for years to this day, when I talk about that, that's probably the hardest. The hardest. They're all hard. All parts. But I think being that she was in the same situation, but she didn't make it.
My God.
That's probably the hard part. And so I was in there for hours and hours, and all I did was pray.
What was, because you talked about it in the book, what was going through your mind? Like, what was going through your mind? Because you were surrounded with your family.
At that point, you're not really thinking. You're not really thinking straight. All I was going through my head was either it's going to take forever for me to die in this ditch, or, will somebody hear my voice? Will God take me out of here? But I kept praying. I was praying out loud, praying and crying and praying and crying. I kept screaming because I knew at least maybe, I don't know, maybe my voice will, I don't know, maybe my voice will go through the ground. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I kept praying and saying, God, if you take me out of this grave. I'll serve you all the days of my life. That's how I kept praying. And because I was raised Catholic, and I would say, and I will be a nun. And then I'll cry and cry and cry, and then I'll pray again. Yeah, we love him, but it's, but, and for hours and hours, and, and miraculously, a lady that was picking bananas in that area close to where we had been buried heard me, and she ran in terror. She ran in fear, thinking it was a ghost. She went and told someone, and she told the young man who actually worked for my family. And this young man said, that must be somebody buried alive. They sometimes bury people alive. So he came with his friend and he dug me out. I've been looking for this guy for years, and I don't know how to find him. I've never been able to know what happened to him. I don't know how to search. I've done everything I could. I really wish that somebody would tell me if this guy is somewhere so I can see him.
Maybe he's going to watch one of your, your stories.
Maybe.
But he was an angel.
So the young man dug me out, and just when he dug me out, remember with the Hutus as well, if they found you trying to save a Tutsi, they will kill you as well. That means you were a traitor as well. So as soon as he took me out, he heard another group coming, and so he said, you can't tell them it's me. I said, I'll never tell them. So he left me there. And then later on, this woman came back, and he came back as well. And he carried me, because I couldn't walk. He carried me to this woman's house, and that woman. So that means my entire family was all killed in there. And I'm thinking, my father would have seen everything that had happened, and maybe he ran. But then my father actually was the opposite. He saw what was happening to his wife and his kids, and he couldn't take it. So he offered himself to be killed. So while I'm thinking my father might be alive, I actually then hear the celebration of the group that just killed him. Hey, we captured him, we just killed him. And that, I just, there's no way. And at the same time, the genocide was still going on. And at the same time, you didn't know when it was going to be able to stop. We didn't know when the RPF, which is the army that was stopping the genocide, when they will ever get to your area. And so then this lady had me for just a few hours, and then they discovered that I was there. So she had to let me go. So that's what happened to my family. And I became the only survivor of my family. There are people who years and years later find that maybe someone else had, been hiding somewhere else and their siblings survived. Myself, I saw all of them. It's not like I could live in denial of thinking, and maybe, but yeah, so that's what happened on that day. And then I was hidden by another man who hid me after that night. He came and hid me for few weeks until the RPF, the RPF, that was the army that was stopping the genocide, got in that area and rescued me. So that's what happened.
Okay, say that again. Who rescued you?
So another man a Hutu man who heard about my story and how I was buried. He heard about that story that morning, and he came and picked me up and took me in his home. Yeah, and hid me for a few weeks. He would put me inside his house during the day, and then during the night I would spend my night outside in his banana plantation. He dug a small hole where I would spend my night. And then during the day, because during the day they wouldn't search in people's homes, so he would put me inside the house during the day, and then he would take me out, because in the night they used to search much more in the houses. And then during the night he would put me in that small hole. Yeah,
I have a hard time processing it right now. just thinking that you went through that level of
Yeah.
pain. I mean, it's immeasurable.
Yeah.
The level of pain that you went through. And then you had to carry on. You had to live a life after what happened.
Yes.
Where did you find the courage? How? Like,
I think at that point, I think the brain comes up with ways to keep you safe, and you are in denial. Every survivor goes through these stages, and you get to a stage of denial where, and I think the brain is trying to protect you. And I think when I got on the safe side at the beginning, I'm like, no, this has just not happened. I think I'm in a nightmare, and I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get out of that nightmare. And I remember it was the first time that when I got in a refugee camp, well, in a camp where they were putting survivors, I sat on the street and cried like a baby. And I'm glad I was actually able to do that. And I cried and cried and cried and cried. I just looked back for those 3 months, and I'm like, no, it actually has happened. I'm all alone, and I don't know where to go. I don't know anyone in this place. I don't know I'm only 14. At that point, you don't know even if you have anyone in the family that survived. Obviously, I had cousins, I had aunties and uncles that had survived, but I didn't know where they were. You didn't know who made it, who didn't make it. And I cried and cried. So that took years of a lot of trauma, nightmares. Took me about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And later on I was fostered by my uncle that lived in Gabon. But every night was a hard night. It was nightmares. It was screaming and crying. And during the day, I couldn't, would go in school, but I would be just on my own and cry. And I didn't feel like I couldn't, I learned to tell my story when I became a Christian again. And when I gave my heart to Christ at the age of 18. But before that, I couldn't tell my story. My uncle would even beg me, would say, just tell me what you can remember. And I just couldn't. I just couldn't.
You were numb.
And it would be through the nightmares that I will say a little bit that, my mom, then I would tell him if he woke me up. And then my mom's head was actually chopped off. And I would give him a bit on pieces. But at the age of 18, a friend of mine invited me to church, and I gave my life to Christ. And on that day, it was the first time in my life I felt like a huge weight being lifted off my shoulder. It felt like somebody had taken a tons off my back and actually taken it off, like physically felt that. And I remember going home and tell my family, my extended family, and tell them, now I understand that God saved my life. Now I understand that God preserved my life even in that pit. Now I understand I have a mission. Now I understand God wants to use my life. It was like a curtain taken off my eyes. It was like a spiritual blindness had just healed. And I started seeing miracles of God. I started seeing, now I know why God sent that young man. Now I know, I started understanding God saved my life for a purpose. So I started searching for that purpose. And I think through prayer and through surrendering all my pain and surrendering all my pain and my burdens to Christ, that was the beginning of my journey. That was the beginning. And to this day, I miss my family. Obviously, that's my history. I've embraced who I am and my past and everything. But the thing that always brings me back and comforts me is that I have a Father who can't be killed. I have a Father in heaven who loves me no matter what. I have a Father that is not does not shy away from the amount and the amount of my wounds. I have a Father who sent his own Son to die on the cross, the same death, and being tormented and being. So he understands my pain. He understands because his own Son was killed on the cross. When I discovered that truth, to this day, when I feel down, when I have my moments, I've gone, because when you go through a traumatic life like that, it's always important that you learn what triggers you and what brings you down. And so I've learned to run to the throne of my Father.
My God.
And to remind myself that I'm not alone. I'm maybe the only survivor, but I'm not alone. That I've got a Father. I've got I'm a daughter of the King that takes care of me and takes care of my heart and all my burdens. And so I think that's what you asked, what carries me every single day. I lean on God every single day. Every single day. Even now as a mother, I lost my mother when I was 14. I don't know how to raise teens. I don't know how to raise teenagers. Nobody taught me how to be a wife. Nobody taught me how to be a friend. It was all those 14 years that I used my mother and used my family to train me. And that's good. But at the same time, you lean on the Father each day to teach you all those things.
Powerful. 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 God, our God is faithful. And I love the fact that you've honored your family.
Yes.
Through this book. Like you say, they're at a better place, right? They're at a better place. And, throughout the book, I think you have a section where you have pictures.
Yes.
Yeah. You have pictures.
And those pictures are also, that's a testimony as well, because everything was burnt in our home. They will destroy your home. They will kill people, destroy their homes, and try to destroy all their memories. That's what a genocide does. And destroy all the pictures. They will burn the pictures and destroy the pictures. So they destroyed all our pictures and took all our stuff. Those pictures that I got are the pictures that my mom used to send to her cousins that were not in Rwanda when we were little. So she would be sending the kids have grown or this and that. So when they returned home, I would go to their homes and actually, give me this picture and I'll go develop. So there's some survivors who have no picture whatsoever of their family. I have a cousin, because he was only 2 years old when the genocide happened. I don't have a photo of his mom, and that's my dad's sister. We don't have a photo of his mom. He doesn't have a photo of his dad, so he doesn't know what the mom looks like. He doesn't know what the dad looks like. So there are people who have nothing whatsoever. Yeah.
Wow, you've taken me to a place I think I've never been. Like the level of pain. But like you talked about Jesus, what Jesus went through. You said that my Father understands my pain because his own Son went through it. And I'm sure that God has given you that heart of accepting what happened, facing the present time. And at the same time, also, how do I deal with people who have murdered my family?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go through it, like that period? Because I think in the book you talk about you had to go back and go to the same school with the same people who murdered your family.
Yes.
you had to forgive. Tell me about that journey of forgiveness. Like,
so that was the hardest and longest journey, and I know that a lot of survivors struggle with that, and it's very understandable. And it's when we talk about the journey of forgiveness, it's not to minimize the pain that we went through. It's not to minimize anybody else's pain, or even when you get abused by any abuser, it's not to excuse the abuse. But the journey was for me, and we all go about it differently. In my country, Hutus and Tutsis and Batwas all live together. Like I said to you, we're all Rwandans now. But the thing is, even right after the genocide, we had what they called gacaca, which is the local court, where you had to meet the perpetrators, and they will be giving accounts of, because Rwanda had to come up with the solutions that worked for the Rwandans. It was people, a lot of Hutus, a lot of people, that perpetrators that were in jail, and so they had to come up with the solutions. And so, but it was confronting for us as survivors. It still is. And to go in a local court where you have to face someone who's raped you, to go in a local court where you have to face somebody who's killed your mother. I had to face the guy who killed my mother. I had to face the guy who even had the guts to even say, oh, actually, reason to why you came out of the pit, we didn't put enough soil because, yeah, that's how you came out. Like, all those excuses, all those things, So you live side by side with the people who've taken everything and have, in exchange, they've given you a burden that you have to live with the rest of your life. When I say burden, I'm talking about the pain.
the pain,
And
absolutely.
so, yes, it changed your life forever. You were a daughter, now you're not. You were a sister, now you're not. You were a wife, now you're not. You were a mother, maybe you don't even have one child that survived. So it was very difficult. And so living side by side or living in the same country, I knew I wasn't going to run away from that country. I lived there all my life. I had lived there. I was born there and lived there until I was 32 years old. That's when I moved away from home. But how was I going to be able to go in class and sit next to a child whose parents have murdered my parents? And also, as I said, when I turned 18, I became a Christian. I needed to find what was going to give me the solution and what was going to also not stand in between my relationship with my king, with my father. And I also wanted to be able to lean on him for the impossible.
Yeah.
And so, and to be like him, like Ephesians says, to be like him, be imitators, be imitators of God, like beloved children. And so I started praying about it because I knew I had hatred in my heart. I knew that my Father in heaven doesn't have hatred.
That's right.
And I knew, I went to church, I prayed, and I had this burden lifted off, but I still had pain in my. And so at some extent, I felt like I had the right to. Well, somebody killed my whole family. Why am I so? I would never love them. I would never love them. You shouldn't love them either. That's how sometimes when we hate someone, we also want God to side with us.
Absolutely.
And I actually had a big issue with preachers that will start preaching about, love your enemies and talk about forgiveness. I had a big. That's when I know my journey in the Lord is not complete, because I have these issues. I have this hatred, this much hatred. And it came to a point actually if I was in the worship team and I can spot a Hutu in the worship team, please, Anna, I'm not standing next to you with a microphone, But
although we're praising the Lord right now.
yeah, and I'm telling you, we have these things even in the church for small things. You know, somebody's backbiting you, or somebody said something about you. You see them in church, you go the other way, and you actually expecting to just praise God. And you know, even wives and husbands, sometimes we have, although it's not to compare with what happened in the genocide. So this is where I had the issue because the preachers will come and talk about, you know, the relationship between the husband and wife. I'm like, no, you can't compare that.
That's right.
Or, you know, sometimes some insensitivity sometimes with, you know, cultures where preachers will talk about, you know, oh, my dog was, you know, was killed. And so I had to forgive the person. And sometimes in the culture, in the African culture, I'm like, no, that's not compared. You can't compare that with my entire family being killed. But long story short, I did actually recognize that I had that big thorn of hatred in my heart. And I asked the Lord to help me. And even today, when I talk about it, sometimes other survivors could get upset about it. But that's what worked for me with my relationship with God. You know, it's not to force that on anyone else.
Yeah.
And I actually took the courage to go meet the man who killed my father, but I couldn't speak to him the first time I went. And the second time I went back, then I was able to talk with him. And man, I think after I was able to speak, so I'm the kind of person that like confronting my own fears. So this is not to be advised to anybody that is being abused to go confront your abuser. That's not, unless God has told you to. It's not what we tell survivors or tell survivors of any kind of rape or abuse or anything. It's not advised unless you actually feel safe enough to do that. But I did actually go with my cousin, and when I met this man and spoke to him. And I always say it's not so much what the abuser, do not expect much. If you're doing it, I did it for my own peace and confronting my fear, because they were like these monsters.
Yeah.
For all those years when I had the nightmares, they were like these monsters in my head that I wanted to confront and to actually, you know, confront my own fears. And I spoke to him, and he had this look of, you know, it's as if I didn't ask you for forgiveness, but I know in my heart it has nothing to do with you. This is me. This is me doing it for me, and actually taking my powers back. That I'm not your victim anymore. And then I went back into the village and went door to door and telling them about it. I didn't only say I came here to forgive you, but I also preached about Jesus, the love of Christ. It's not because they had asked me to forgive them. It's like I said, it's not much about the perpetrators. It's about you. It's about you and God. And it was more of obeying what God wanted to do in my life. That was the hardest moment. But that night when I was actually going back, it was a fast day. It was a fast day that I felt again like this hatred. I had no hatred whatsoever. Those feelings of wanting to revenge or wishing them, you know, bad, or wishing that anything that, you know, the same thing that happened to me should happen to them, and they should feel the way I felt. All these things, all those wishes. For the first time, I actually just really was able to see all that side of my heart to actually be clean in that area as well. So I think the walk with God is a journey. Like I said, I got saved, but not that that unforgiveness was not resolved, and I felt like I had the right to hate. But it was a journey. The more I grew in Christ, the more I grew in understanding God's will for my life, then the more I understood, you know what, I'm not gonna give them. They've already taken my family. They've already taken what's dear to me. I'm not gonna give them also the power to control my emotions wherever I go. And that's what happens with unforgiveness. It's like you know, somebody said you're drinking the poison and you're expecting the other person to. You're drinking that poison. The person, it could be way back in Africa, and you here in Australia. But the minute you think of them, your day goes, you know, the whole day and the whole night, or the whole. And that's what unforgiveness does, because it does actually. It's not something that you can put off and put on. It's a constant thing. So me doing that on that day, and sometimes people say, "Oh my goodness, if you forgive the killers, it means you can forgive it." You'll be surprised. Sometimes things that make me mad with my kids. It's not like, I think forgiveness is it's God's command, but it's also you leaning on God to actually cover you in His grace and enable you to be like Him again and again and again. So when my kids make me mad, the first thing that comes in my mind, it's not like, I forgive you. No, being mad. No, it may take me a while. It may take me, if somebody, you know, have done something, but I'm always reminded, if I was able to help you that time, I'm able to help you now. And
so good.
Yes, and it's about us to. It's about receiving an obedience to God to do that, like that servant in the Bible and in Matthew, where, you know, a master forgave his servant a very big loan that he had, but then the servant went and choked his fellow servant for just a small debt that he had. And I'm reminded that the Lord helped me to forgive that big debt. And so each day I'm reminded that He can also carry me through every other thing every day. So it's an everyday journey as a child of God.
Thank God for the gift of forgiveness. Thank God for His grace. What a story. I mean, that journey of forgiveness and just relying on God completely. So powerful. Powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. This book, well written, powerful, a story of hope, resilience. I mean, it's got tons of good nuggets here. You know, sad, happiness. It's got the whole package. It's got the whole package here. What do you hope readers will take away from it?
All right. So when I got the promise, or when I got the promise that I would write a book, was when I was 16. After I tried to commit suicide, I tried to take my own life because of all that pain. And I actually started writing in my small book when I was going through therapy. And that little book, my aunt came to visit just recently, and I was showing her that book, and you kept that, and I've kept that for years and years. And when then I became a Christian, and I actually heard the voice again of God to telling me to use my testimony for His glory. So what I wanted the readers to, whoever that will pick that book, first, I wanted them to hear the miracles of God that can happen to a little girl, a 14-year-old little girl that was buried alive. Then I also wanted to have a message of hope, that there is hope no matter what, no matter how big the pain, no matter how big the brokenness, that He is the hope. He's the
He
author
is.
and the finisher, of our lives and of our hope as well. I also wanted somebody to see God in that book and what God has done. Not a man. What God. I only owe the glory to Him for every bit of the journey of my life, because I could be somewhere running in the streets, crazy, mad, like not functioning properly. I also wanted the world to learn about the history, because what happened to my people is not just a story that happened to one person. It's not just a story that happened in a small country somewhere in Africa, but it's part of the history, and also to prevent other genocides in other places. But most importantly, I wanted to tell the survivors, my fellow survivors, and other survivors of any other kind of abuse, that there is resilience in all of us. Resilience is a God-given gift, and it's the ability to be able to bounce back, and that build is built in you, in every human being, and it's to just be able to let God unlock that ability for you and to accept that. And so I put my story down. I was very raw, so to speak. Like I probably didn't maybe share everything fully, but I tried to put everything that I remembered at that point to be able to help someone else. Because with the book, like Cindy, we haven't met in person, but with the book, you can actually speak to someone you've never met. With a book, you can speak to cultures that you've never been to. You can speak to countries you've never stepped in. And so I know that with a book, I could reach more people than I could ever meet in person. Yes, I do speak in schools. Yes, I do go travel countries, but there are people that I will never meet in person that may be encouraged. So I thought my story would encourage someone else, but also to educate, like in schools, in universities. I do the speaking and I do share my stories in order to educate and to, to prevent future genocides and racism of any kind, of any type, and hate speeches of any type in this generation and the next generation. But I also wrote it for my family legacy, that my family will not be forgotten, but, they'll be remembered. And my fellow Tutsis and all those a million people that don't have a voice. And also for my children, because I will not live forever. For my children and children to actually, for my children to ever tell their children, this is what grandma went through. And for them to also know about the legacy of their grandparents and their uncles and their aunties that they've never met. So there were many reasons, but most importantly, to give glory to God for His miracles in my life and to use that for other people.
You have done it extremely well.
Thank you, Cindy.
Wow. Like you said, I've never met you, but I know of you.
Yes.
I've known your family.
Yes.
What a fascinating story. What a fascinating book. I really encourage everyone to go get this book. Where can people get a copy of it?
So we can put the link in the chat as well if you want to. It is on Amazon. If you go Frida Umuhoza, that's a second edition. That's the only one that is available. Second edition of Frida, Chosen to Die, Destined to Live. So on Amazon, I've also got a website where people can purchase the book. Mostly if you are here in Australia, it will be much cheaper. But if you are in America, Amazon might be cheaper, or other places of the world, Amazon may be a bit cheaper. So my website is www.destinedtolive.com.au. I'll also send you that so you can put that in the chat
absolutely.
if you want to. For those who are in Rwanda, the book is also found at Arena, the stadium Arena, the shop, the bookshop that is Made in Rwanda shop. At the same time, you can also find it at the Genocide Memorial in Gisozi, Caritas Library, or you can also find it at the libraries in Rwanda. Sorry, I forgot all the names, but yes, at the libraries in Rwanda, that way you can find the book.
Yeah, and we'll have all that information. We have all the links where people can go ahead and just click and get access to the bookstore.
Yes.
How can people? I know after people will be watching, people would want to connect with you. I know we're friends on IG, Instagram, but where can people connect with you?
Yeah, people can connect with me on social media. I'm not very big on social media, but I try my best. I'm on Instagram as Umuhoza94, on Twitter as well, Umuhoza Frida. You can search me up. And like I said, it's not my strength, but I guess everybody's got their own strength. That's probably I will grow in that. But yes, people can find me on there. And, if you want to send a message, if you want to send a prayer request, if you want to send anything that you want to send to me, feedback or anything that you want to send through, it'll be appreciated.
Absolutely. Wow. We do want you to write more books, in the future, because you've done an excellent job with this one. Frida. This is what I want to tell you. You're definitely one of a kind.
Thank you,
and
Cindy.
I'm so grateful that God allowed us to connect. You're a friend. I feel like I've known you. I feel like I've known you. So
Yes.
you are a friend to me. You are a sister to me. You have a home here in America.
Thank you, Cindy.
In Chicago, precisely. So I know you're doing extremely well. You married, you have children, you have a beautiful blended family. And I follow you. I follow you. I know what's going on with you. So
yes.
I know you're doing well, and all the glory to God. So I wish you the best. I know this is just the beginning. Your story will be told in bigger platforms than this one. So all the best. I love you. I love you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for honoring me and saying yes to my invitation. So
thank you, Cindy.
I'll keep in touch. Definitely. I'll keep in touch.
Same here.